and the Park Commission will come to order. Roll call, Mary, help us up, please.
Chair David Downs,
Here.
Vice Chair Jason Branch, Elizabeth Wiveen,
Here.
Georgianne Keyport,
Here.
Beck Saresig,
Here.
Danielle Hai, Carly Whitner,
Here.
Michael Howard, Harry Schworm,
Here.
Sam Hassan.
Thanks, Mary. Next item is to adopt the agenda. Marshall, you said there was something you would like to amend?
Yeah, so what we'd like to do is add in another discussion item. And so we'll make this, the discussion item will be an update on the pedestrian and bicycle master plan. So we'll make that 7B and then just bump down the other department happenings to a 7E.
Okay. Any other comments or alterations that the commission would like to do? Hearing none, can I have a motion to accept the agenda?
I motion to accept the agenda.
Second?
Second.
Zach, second. Motion is agenda is adopted. Visitor presentation. Seeing none, we'll close that item. Approval of the minutes. First one is 5A, approval of our meeting on August 8th. Any comments, corrections, discussion on those minutes? Can we have a motion to adopt or approve those minutes?
To approve.
Georgianne,
I second.
Kylie, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes approved. Minutes to be received at the city council meeting of July 31st. Any comments or discussion on those minutes? Next one is the planning commission meeting of July 12th. Any comments or discussions on those minutes? Hearing none, those minutes will be received. Going on to discussion items, number 7A, Meadow Park Public Safety Campus Site Plan Consent Review.
All right.
Good title.
Yeah, that was a long one.
It was good.
Let me go ahead. I'm just gonna pull up a slide deck here for us to follow along.
Our monitor on?
Is that not on?
Oh,
Oh,
that's what I was asking earlier.
Yeah.
Oh,
Somebody has the remote. Probably a guy.
here she goes.
Yep.
I was confused. I thought.
Yeah, you thought I was just giving you a hard time. Yeah.
Turn that on. This is on the record.
It's going. Not gonna, aha,
There we are.
well done.
All right, we all good?
Yep.
All right, so this first discussion item that we're reviewing tonight is regarding Meadow Park, which is adjacent to the public safety facility. And this is part of a concept plan review based on a submittal that's coming through the city. And so the first thing I want to start out by kind of explaining is really the review process that occurs at the city. Which if you recall, it's a 3-step process. So we always begin with a concept plan review, which is what we're reviewing tonight. And then that plan is going to go from here to the Planning Commission, which they're meeting tomorrow night. And then from there, they'll make their recommendation to City Council. And that's going to get reviewed by City Council on Monday, September 18th. After the concept plan approval, then it moves into a preliminary plan where we get into a lot more detail, and then ultimately a final plan. So a 3-step process. The concept plan we're reviewing here tonight really is a high-level plan. Kind of the point here is it's really just kind of showcasing the direction that this plan is going in regards to the site along with the park. And so I'm going to go through that with you, and really what we're looking for from the Park and Rec Commission is your comments, your questions, your feedback. And then that's helpful to then for the Planning Commission to understand where you're coming from as it relates to the park. And then for City Council to understand what your comments and feedback is as they're going through their approval on Monday. And then that feedback then helps go back to the developer to shape the preliminary plan with some more details, okay? The preliminary plan, gets into more details such as grading, such as elevations, along with stormwater, which we're going to talk a little bit about. So those are some things that aren't really accounted for in the concept plan, but they get into more detail once we get into that preliminary phase.
That doesn't include the actual buildings, right? That's a separate thing, the actual police and fire buildings.
Yeah, so they're going to be reviewing that as part of the concept, but that's really the Planning Commission's purview.
No, I'm not saying that, but that's part of this planning thing. They're still in the process of defining what the building looks like, or is that a done deal?
Yep. So that'll be part of that
Okay.
review process as they go along through the concept and preliminary and final. So just to provide a little context with the site that we're discussing tonight, it's the location of the current fire station there, which sits south of Engler and to the east of White Oak. And then you can see to the west of the fire station is where the current Meadow Park exists. Then I thought it'd be helpful to just zoom out a little bit more so we can have an understanding of other nearby parks as it relates to Meadow Park. So if you can follow my cursor here, Meadow Park is what we're talking about here tonight. To the south here is where Moores Park exists. To the north across Engler is Greep Park. A little further to the west here is Sunset Park. And then on the other side on the east side of 41, we've got the Community Center Park, and then also Lions Park down here to the south. And as we've talked about in the past, a lot of, our goal as it relates to our park system in neighborhood parks is we try to strive for a park to serve a half-a-mile radius within our developments. And I think it's kind of important to note that as we're looking at Meadow Park, Moores Park actually is within that half-a-mile as well. So in some respects, the neighborhood throughout here has a couple of parks within that half-a-mile radius to consider. Greep Park is also within a half-a-mile of Meadow Park. Obviously, the challenge there, though, is crossing Engler Boulevard, which is a factor that we consider when we're looking at where our neighborhood parks exist and access to them. Because again, our neighborhood parks are really intended for people to access them via walking or biking to them. There are future plans for Engler Boulevard to get reconstructed, which has been out in the public, and you may have seen some of those concepts that are calling for a roundabout at Bavaria and White Oak. And so I know they are looking at opportunities there when they do reconstruct Engler for safe pedestrian crossing near that White Oak intersection. To provide a little bit more background about the public safety site. So this is really stemming from the city council's strategic plan that they adopted back in 2021, which included six different visionary outcomes. And one of those goals was for Chaska to have quality city facilities. And this was kind of looking out into the year 2025. And for those facilities to meet the growth of the community and also to provide a sense of community pride, with the quality of the facilities. And so that's really where the process started for the city to look at the police station and how that really needs to relocate out of City Hall because it's undersized. And the decision was to bring that up to the location of the fire station and create a public safety facility there. And then they're also looking at expansion of the municipal services campus. We'll be looking at relocation of the library out of City Hall. And then that final project would be the remodeling of City Hall once police and the library are vacated out of there. And so the start of all of that is really here with the public safety facility that we're reviewing here tonight as part of this concept. Leading up to tonight, there has been some public engagement to inform the community about the fire station. So there was a neighborhood meeting that was held at the fire station back on July 26th. And then that same information was also displayed at the city's booth at the River City Days event that occurred earlier back in July. Some of the initial comments that were received as part of that initial engagement was looking kind of the look of the fence that would be at the perimeter of the public safety campus. So I think some concern was, making sure it doesn't look like a prison, essentially, and so I think the comment back was, we want to make it decorative in nature, but it does also need to serve a security purpose as well. There was some comment about having a balance of trees and grass on the southern berm of the site. So rather than just having a wall of trees, they actually preferred having a little bit of break in there with some grass. There was some comments about the location of the park, which I think had to do more with like the location of the playground based on the concept that was shown, which we'll get into more once we get into the future slide. There was a comment about trail maintenance and just the existing condition of the trails that exist today, which we'll see in the concept. There's going to need to be a realignment of the trail system within the park area. So in the end, there will be a new trail surface. There was comment about the amount of park green space. So again, residents generally advocating to maintain a level of green space within the park. And then there was also a comment about trail access during construction. So I think there's some of the residents in that area that utilize the trails and also the sidewalks within that area to do kind of a walking loop. You know, so their hope is to maintain that access as long as possible, which I think that will be the goal, but there likely will be a phase during construction where some of that trail access is going to be impacted. Okay, so here is ultimately the concept depicting the site changes along with the revised Meadow Park. So I'll just go through and provide an overview here to provide a little more context. So here you can see the dotted line is indicating the existing fire station building. And so what is being proposed here is a tear down of the existing fire station and then building a brand new building. And there will be a couple of proposed accesses off of Engler to get into the site. And then over on the western edge here, there's going to be more of a public entrance coming into the site where there will be public parking spaces available along with a public entrance into the building, which will include access to public restrooms as well. And then you can see to the west here is where Meadows Park would still exist. However, you can see here, it's sort of tough to see, but in the shaded area here is where the existing playground container sits. So you can see that that is going to get impacted based on what's being proposed for the site and the parking lot access. And so that is where we are going to need to ultimately relocate the playground container. And so with this concept, it's showing, you know, a bean-shaped area. And again, this is concept still, but it was indicating that a playground container could exist somewhere on this northern side. There could still be an open grass area to the south. And then some of the thought process here was creating a connection between the park to the building. I think there is a desire for the police and the fire staff to engage with the community. And so they see that park as kind of an extension of their building and being able to connect and engage with community members there. So that was the thought process there. And I know, again, I think that comment was, there's been some comment about preferring the playground container maybe on the south side rather than the north side, which, you know, we've had an opportunity to talk about that a little bit last month as part of a work session when we had an initial look at this concept plan. I think those are all good conversations and those are good comments that you can provide here tonight. But there again, I think one thing we want to point out here is that as we go through the concept, preliminary, and final plan review process here, it's really focused more on the size of the park, because what we'll ultimately end up doing is conducting more of a community engagement process that's ultimately going to define the playground amenities and different things of that nature. You know, this is showing the potential for a shelter building there, you know, so whether or not that stays or the type and style, size of it, things of that nature, we're going to ultimately work with the residents in the area after the final plan review is defined so that we have a better idea ultimately of what the park size is going to be and what the edges are, if that makes sense.
So at this time, you're not able to say like what size the current park is versus at least that concept plan and what size that is currently? That's still,
So I think as we're reviewing it today, this is what's being proposed.
so is this currently larger? This new concept plan, is that larger than what exists now?
Park is a lot smaller.
The park area is smaller, but I believe because the park area is smaller, they're trying to show that maybe we can make a larger playground area and bring in some more amenities there. But ultimately, while this is showing some open green space, it likely is a little bit smaller than what exists today. Is something to keep in mind here.
Is it possible to, so it looks like there's two holding ponds, water holding ponds? Is that what I'm seeing, the blue?
Yep.
Is there, and I have no idea if you can manipulate or reduce the size of those such that you could make the park bigger? Is there opportunity for that?
So that's a good question. That's a good lead into another factor that's going to impact this park, which is going to need to get accounted for in the preliminary phase, is how they are going to manage the stormwater on this site. And so there's a couple ways they can go about that. And it's going to require some further evaluation. But one method would be to utilize the existing stormwater and wetland to basically hold and manage the stormwater, but that actually would result in those needing to expand in order to accommodate a larger need for managing the stormwater here, given the size of the building and the larger parking lot. So that ultimately would further impact the size of the park. That's what's being showed here. The other option to manage the stormwater would be to look at underground tanks and storage. And so that is an option that will be evaluated. That option is just going to be more of an impact on the cost to the project.
Yeah, that would be something that we could advocate for. You know, that if it's a one-time cost and we get a much bigger park, it may well be in the community's best interest to go ahead and do that. You know, so it's something we should certainly keep on the horizon for our recommendations.
Yep. And I think the last thing I would point out, you can see the dotted line here, which is really accounting for proof of parking. And so what that is accounting for is the growth of the police department over time and the need for future parking to be able to accommodate the vehicles. And so while that's not needed necessarily today, it is being identified as needed into the future. And so where they install the fencing, the perimeter fencing from the beginning is another thing for us to consider. I think there was some comment from residents that they would prefer to see the park being larger from the beginning. But I think that's another thing for you to consider as part of your comments is eventually at some point in the future, that is going to have to expand. You know, so I think it might be something to think about because it can be a little bit difficult having another conversation down the road where it feels like we're taking something away.
They build that at the time that they're building the rest of it, so that footprint would be used up, or would that just be green space until they needed it?
That's what he's saying we should consider.
Yep.
Okay, well, maybe it looks like it's in the concept plan that they're building
Yeah,
it.
so they're showing it, if they built it out with the proof of parking, this is where the fence line would be. You know, the other, I think, option to consider would be they would install the fence just along here. But at some point in the future, then that fence would have to get relocated further out into the park in order to accommodate more parking area.
That a driveway in between those two tree rows? So where the park is and you cross over to get to the building? That is a driveway, isn't it?
Just a path, I think, to the park.
You're talking here?
So that tree row that your cursor's on right now? And the two
Here?
there, right down the middle, that's a driveway, isn't it?
This would be an access point into the site coming off of Engler Boulevard.
And it would go, yeah, you're right. It goes all the way through down to the parking.
So it splits those tree rows there. You've got public parking on one side and then they have access to this lower lot. Yeah.
The fencing goes just along the south and east side. It doesn't go along the park.
Oh, I believe it'll start generally in this corner here.
And it'll go south from there. Right,
Yep.
but it doesn't go up towards Engler.
Oh,
Is there any concern for, I propose putting a fence between the kidney-shaped park and then that water? Just for safety issues? At Holding Pond?
that would probably be something that would need to be evaluated
Yeah,
down the road, depending on the proximity of.
Path that's shown there on the side of the park. That doesn't exist today, is that correct?
Correct. So again, it's a little hard to see, but the existing trail would be that, if you follow my cursor here.
Yep.
Would come along here, access the existing playground, and then it kind of cuts through down to here. So the more blackened outline would be the proposed new trail system to get through the site while maintaining the same connections in and out of the park. So that's really, I mean, I can go back, but that's really kind of the overview as it relates to the park. You know, I think high level, it's, you know, ultimately the park is getting impacted. And so that's where we're just looking for your questions, your comments, feedback.
And we talked before about the park is going to stay open during construction. And reconstructing the new park will take place after the buildings are done.
I don't know that for certain,
But
but
that's a recommendation.
that could be a recommendation that we take note. And so we're going to we just want to record your feedback. And then ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to put that into a summary and then detail them out to be able to forward on to the planning commission and city council. But I think that would be an appropriate comment.
Yeah, I agree. I think
know,
that's,
Open and available as long as possible, but also understanding that at some point, you know, they're probably going to need some of that for staging in order to construct the building. But it's also, again, a little bit of why I mentioned that Moore's Park is also another reasonable neighborhood park for the residents in that area to access during that time when that Meadows Park would be impacted.
Obviously, this is all just concept right now, but do we have any target year for construction that we're looking, is this like 2026 or?
Good question. So my understanding is that the goal is to come back with the preliminary plan in November. And then a final in December, January, so that they can then, assuming approval along that timeline, they would then go out to bid and begin construction next year, next spring, or kind of late spring, early summer. And so then my thought would be, once we get through that final plan approval process, we'll then ultimately know what the park size and boundaries are. And so we would follow up with the residents in that area probably next spring to embark on a process to then define what that park's going to look like in terms of
When will
playground.
the water, when will the runoff water study be done?
They will have to account for that as part of their preliminary plan submittal. Yeah, so I think that's something that would be good for you to comment on, for the planning and city council to factor into.
The concern is, I think from our point of view, is that the area that's going to be left for the park is not going to be what we'd like to see. It'll be adequate, whatever it is, but it's going to be under the limit or under the size that we would recommend, and anything that they can do to limit the runoff area that could improve or increase the park area would be certainly very desirable.
Well, this is supposed to be like a neighborhood park, right? And how does the acreage here compare to the average for our neighborhood parks?
Good question.
Sorry.
So I believe currently, the current park parcel is a little over 3 acres, but that's also including those wetlands. And let me refer to my notes. And so I think there's about, I think this is going to impact about another acre. So we're probably looking at about a little over 2 acres in size. But that's also including those wetlands. So it's a smaller neighborhood park overall, compared to some of our other neighborhood parks, but kind of.
Buildings, businesses. I'm not familiar enough with that area behind it. Is it more condos or is it individual homes?
Yeah, there's the apartment complex that exists here, and then there's, a lot of single family. Maybe if I go back.
It's mostly single family homes behind
Yeah.
it.
Mostly single family.
It would just be, we would, as a Parks Commission, want the council to explore, and Planning Commission to explore the potential use of underground water storage to increase the amount of green space in the park. Rather than require, but explore, because I think ultimately it may be a financial decision.
Right, I absolutely agree with that.
Well, I think it could also be like, because you have to go through like with wetlands, you also have to go through like state permitting and things like that with those, so.
I'm guessing the wetland, because at least on this, they show one wetland and they really probably can't do a whole lot with that. And they probably are staying away from that. And what they're doing is expanding the stormwater area, which
Yeah.
probably wouldn't be subject to the
That-
state requirements, but I know what you're saying, so.
Yeah.
Considering safety fencing between whatever water there is there and the park. Just for small kids who,
Yeah, the only, because there's so many ponds and most cities don't put fencing around them. I think the only time you would is if for some reason it was particularly because of the proximity to the trail. If there was a really steep area, that would, probably warrant some sort of a barrier of some type, but
Sure.
There's lots of walkways around water all around, so.
Well, the park by you now has got the path on the outside of the pond, correct? And the
Yeah,
pond,
there's,
pond's right, basically one side of the park.
yeah, one side of the trail, although the trail is a little bit far removed from the actual wetland, but there's a second stormwater pond there. And the trail is directly adjacent to that, and it does fall off pretty steep.
and there is a fence there, right?
No.
Okay.
In there was erosion control fencing for a long
Oh.
time that just got removed, but yeah, there's no fencing there, but there's a big chunk of the pond or trail that's kind of L-shaped that runs along the stormwater pond.
I think we kind of looked at this when we were looking at Lake Grace, and that the path that kind of ran along those single family homes kind of had a drop off. And then I think the solution was to have like some shrubs along
Yeah. some
there to kind of
barrier.
act as a barrier,
Yeah.
but not a fence.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
If there is some of those areas, vegetation sometimes do the same thing.
Taping can come.
Just some sort of barrier.
Because it also sounds like the neighbors don't want any more fencing up. So it looks like a prison.
Yeah.
I think overall, it just seems, echoing everyone's comments that we'd like to see a bigger park if it's financially feasible, because it seems like there's a great opportunity to have a community mix with the city and share in some, camaraderie and have a general meeting place for everyone to come together. So it'd be cool if it was a bigger park and a themed park that went along with the fire station and police station. And there could be really some neat things we could do if the park was a little bit larger, but looking at all the constraints we have, it might kind of be pretty difficult to do.
I mean, if it's just to kind of piggyback on that, if it's just going to come down to money, obviously there's really, doesn't matter what we recommend if it just comes down to money. But to me, it feels like even if it costs a little bit more to help create a better space for community connection, it's a worthwhile investment, I think, for the city to make.
Within the project budget, if that's what's paying for the redone playground and all those sorts of things, I would rather just for the community, probably see the money go in, because an additional green space may look nice, but I'd rather see more money go into really doing the playground well and theming it than I would just creating green space and spending a lot of money on the underground reservoirs. The trade-off would be a lot more play value for the community than just green space, which looks nice, but may not really provide any additional play value for the neighborhood or the community.
I second his feelings.
We don't really know how much of that park, the green space is really used versus the playgrounds
Right.
stuff, do we? I mean, you're right. If it's just pretty out there and it's not really being used to any great extent, we may be overstating the need for getting it larger.
That green space, is it big enough to have soccer game on it? Like the little kids play. They don't need as much space, but I don't have a good sense of how big that space is.
Formally, I think, that's happened at that site currently, but it's more informal.
Yeah.
Play, that's what it's intended for, but yeah. I think a lot of time, normally I'm advocating for green space in parks, but sometimes those spaces are underutilized. Where I do think, I agree with Commissioner Schwarm that the play value really is more so with the playground apparatus and the components there.
I think you couldn't, as Liz was saying, you can theme it and tie it into the whole public safety and maybe even advocate for more of the rubber surfacing around to make things a little bit more special if it's going to be kind of a unique playground and a unique site. I just watching kids on playgrounds again, which I haven't done in years, but just watching them, boy, it makes a huge difference when it's that rubberized surface. And I know you're doing that at the new community park, but I would actually kind of encourage it for this park as well. And again, if there's a choice of where to put the money, I'd rather see it there.
I guess for a preliminary, a suggestion would be, think about how that green space could be used. What would it be used for? And then it could be sized appropriately.
Yeah,
If they imagine Frisbee or picnics or something.
you're going to have a little of that anyways, and the space you're going to pick up is going to be adjacent to that pond. So I'm not sure, that's the space you're going to pick up. So I'm not sure how much that's going to end up being used for that, because it's going to be closer to the pond and closer to the road. Whereas the green space back behind is where they can throw a Frisbee. So I just,
Well, that's what I'm saying. That side is, how would you use that space? How do the residents in the area want to use that space? And then you can decide how big the playground space is and how big the green space is. I don't know if I understood you right, but it's just planning for how would you use the space, and then it all falls out from there. I think.
I would just say, don't be constrained by past practices and say, oh, in neighborhood parks, we just have wood fiber and that's all we put in our playgrounds. I see things transitioning right now where playgrounds of the future are all going to have that type of surfacing, and why not start to look at things here rather than just always be constrained by, oh, this is how we always do it, because it's easier maintenance wise, or it's easier, as what's more user friendly and what the public will like.
More accessibility,
Because as much as you say, that, the wood fiber I know is technically accessible, it's not as accessible as everybody would like, so.
I want to go back to those trees that are kind of lined up, what Zach pointed out, and then it seems like you drive in between the trees.
Yep.
Like that seems really dangerous to be.
I was gonna say, I've been staring at this for like the last 20 minutes, and I'm like, it just seems like it's a public safety campus. That doesn't seem safe to me as a
Like
parent.
if there's public restrooms available, presumably if we have our theme park, people are going to be going to the bathroom, and then you're going to walk on that kind of trail leading into the building, and there's trees there blocking the view. Yeah, that was a good point.
As a parent, but in proximity to having public restrooms, like if I know I can go to a park that has public restrooms and it's not Jiffy John's, it's not Biffy's, it's not Outhouses, I would take my kids to that park just because I can go to a nice, clean, like indoor restroom for my kids to use or for myself to use. I would see that as a high traffic point right there.
You know what, I think my guess is that's designed for police vehicles really, and the people accessing the site as opposed to any public. And so I think it's really.
He said that was the public entrance off.
It is the public entrance, but you see that, I know where you're pointing to, but I think where that's leading, because there's no reason to have that if it's not just police vehicles, is sort of my guess, and that was a police requirement, but I'm just guessing.
Trees being there, it sounded.
No, I'm not sure if it's the trees or if it's, I know it's that driveway that you're
Yeah,
talking
that's
about
what it
there.
looks like it's designed for
small
cars, vehicles to drive right down the middle there.
I don't know what they
Well, it
do.
is, but if you're gonna be parking there, you're gonna come in and you're gonna take that quick left and then go into the public parking.
Mhm.
And that driveway that's going back is designed to take police vehicles and probably police employees back to the parking, is sort of my guess.
So if a police officer, patrol car is responding to a 911 call, where are they leaving here to get out to Engler?
side, I think.
That's all on the other side?
They're probably gonna, yeah, be coming out this other side. Yeah.
What is that driveway for then? You're
Parking.
I think it's for the employees and for. I was gonna advocate for getting rid of that driveway because I was sort of with you, but I think it was probably put in at the police department's request, and I'm just guessing when I was starting to think about it.
well,
Maybe it's like a requirement.
I could see, you can still funnel into that public parking space from coming in from the north, and I just don't know why they have that extra driveway there. If the emergency vehicles are gonna be leaving from the east side of that campus, they can still access the parking from the back there, but maybe it was a request. I mean, again, variables that I'm not aware of or that we're not aware of, but that makes me really nervous. But sitting here staring at it for like 20 minutes, like that one driveway there in close proximity to a playground as well as a walkway to public restrooms.
I think it's worth asking that question of whether that could be deleted. Because you're right, that would force the employee and the police traffic to come in the other side,
Mhm.
probably.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
Or whether
Yeah.
you could slide that entrance, a little bit further, and just have it come up through the middle of the public parking there too. Because that would be a little more streamlined too, then they wouldn't have to make a kind of a quick turn as you come in there.
Yeah, so I think that's a good comment. We can have them sort of evaluate essentially that driveway, what the intent is.
Yeah.
Can it be reshaped? If it needs to stay the way it is, do the trees need to be considered, to make, to account for the safety concerns? I think that's another good comment that we can share for them to evaluate as they work towards the preliminary.
Rather see them close it off and put a bunch of like picnic tables in there or something like that, just if we can't get more park space, something like that.
Just by doing that, you would create some green space, for the playground and maybe make the playground area a little bigger too.
Yeah. But that, when you talk about a place for people to have community, there's a table, let's break some bread.
Gluten-free.
I'll stop talking now.
No, that was really good.
Anything else comment wise for the planning board or city council? We got,
I think we got it. You got it, Mary? Yeah.
Theme park,
So-
Mary, theme park.
We're talking Disney.
Yeah, we can put a roller coaster right there, Terry.
all right. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Where did you want to insert the the bike master plan? Was that now or is that later
We're
on?
gonna do that later, so.
Okay, next one is the community center master plan update.
So back when we met in August, it was the very next night, if you recall, where we held the final open house event at the community center. So that went really well. We offered 2 opportunities for the public to come into the community center. We held one over the lunch hour and then we held another one into the evening. And we had really nice display boards set up in the banquet room there, where people were able to walk through and see all of the different things that were being recommended. Our consultants were on hand, staff were on hand, along with members of our citizen task force. So a lot of really good engagement there and some good feedback. And then at the same time, we also offered a presentation during each of those times that we held in the theater. So that provided us an opportunity to kind of go a little bit more in depth and talk about the process that got us to that kind of final concept to provide a little bit more context. So we did that, and then a couple of days after we made all that information, the display boards, along with a version of the presentation and a survey available on our project website. And so we pushed that out to the community. If they weren't able to make the open house, they still had that opportunity to view that information online and provide feedback. I'd say overall, my sense is that the majority of people like the direction we're going. I think the couple of comments that sort of stood out were, number one, the pickleball players came out in force, and I think they ultimately are desiring more of what I would say a dedicated indoor pickleball facility, which certainly understand that desire based on the popularity of that sport currently. But I think that's something that we'll bring back to the task force. We're going to have another meeting with the task force, but I think we considered that as we looked at things, but one of our objectives that was set forth at the beginning of that process was to create more multi-purpose spaces and flexible spaces that can also adapt and change over time and provide us some flexibility with our programming. And so we feel like while we're not having dedicated indoor pickleball courts, we are showing a plan that raises up our lower gym to be the same level as our existing upper level gym, along with an additional gym as part of an expansion. So I think that alone is going to provide us some more opportunities for pickleball programming than we currently have today, but still give us that flexibility to do a variety of other programming within that gym space. But I mean, that was certainly some feedback we got. And then another, I think, bit of feedback was stemming from some of our passionate racquetball players, and seeing that the plan is currently showing the racquetball courts getting converted into additional fitness programming type space on the lower level. And then the plan was calling to essentially build a second floor that would accommodate storage on the upper level to be able to serve some of that expanded gym space. And my thought on that is, again, I think that was being true to the objectives that we created in the beginning to try to maximize the existing space that we have. So it made sense to capture that space because racquetball courts do take up a decent amount of space, and frankly, they only serve, 2 people at a time, so that's something that needs to be considered. And generally it's a sport that's kind of been on the decline for a while. So I think it was the right thing for us to take a look at that space and see how else we could use them. But also looking at it further, I think there is opportunity to potentially keep one or both of them if we do end up building that expansion onto the building. I think that expansion is providing us plenty of space for fitness programming. on that lower level. So I think my message to some of those racquetball players was, it's kind of what it's showing, but again, that's still concept at this point. And I think once we dive into it more with, the actual architectural design, that's something that we can account for just based on the feedback we've gotten. Yeah, not the same size. Yeah.
What was the feedback from the pickleball players about not having a dedicated space? So because like what I see right now is the courts are drawn out. They just need to put the nets up. Is that kind of the extent of what they have to do to set up to be able to play? Is just put the nets out right now?
Yeah, and it comes down to, and Terry's an avid player, but it comes down to surfacing, I think, a little bit. And then also just permanent availability.
Sure.
So literally having, better surfacing for the sport rather than the, wood court surfacing that's on a, basketball gym floor. But then also that it's as dedicated that they could show up anytime and pickleball would be an option. Which we're seeing the private sector is starting to invest in that. And I think that's part of it too. I think the private sector is going down that road, and which is great. And I think it really accommodates more of kind of the advanced players, whereas I think a community center setting is a little bit more for that beginner recreational player. And I think, by the additional gym space we're looking at, I think it is providing more opportunity than we have today, which is good.
I also think is wise because I think sometimes pickleball players can be very passionate, and then it becomes a barrier for beginners to join in, having that exclusivity, and instead of being able to have a community center where it's like multi-purpose and we can put up pickleball courts and you can learn how to play, instead of having dedicated areas where people might start to feel ownership over it. Yeah.
I would agree that the private sector is starting to step up. 3 years ago, the only place to really play indoors during those winter months were gyms and community centers and schools, that would offer it. And the private sector in the last 3-4 years, they continue to build, and there's 3 facilities within easy driving distance now of Chaska that are private, and more going up all the time,
Chanhassen's building.
So I would say, and they run programs for beginning players as well. I mean, it's not just high level players that play there. They offer a lot of beginning pickleball. I think the barrier sometimes is the cost at private facilities is a little bit more than what people are probably used to at the community center, where during the day a lot of them are probably silver sneakers members that are coming in, and which is great because they're coming in regularly, and that I think is a benefit. But I think continuing to offer it at the times that you do in the gyms is really the way to go, and that makes the gym multi-purpose and spreads out, and you get more use throughout the day by offering what you do right now. So I really think it's a good concept, and it's still a fun game, and it can serve a lot of different levels. So.
Yeah, and then based on the survey results we got back, one of the questions essentially was getting at, do you like the direction, that the overall plan is going? Do you support it on a scale of a 1 to 5? I think here in Minnesota, we do need to include a 3, kind of that neutral. So if I were to take the 3 through 5, we were looking at a 91%. sort of approval rating, which I thought was really good to see. And then you might have saw we got a nice article in the Herald that highlighted the project and the process and the open house. So that generated some more good conversation through social media. So kind of where we're at is we're working with the consultants to essentially kind of wrap up the final draft report as part of this master plan. Now that we feel like we feel like it is moving in the right direction, we're not necessarily seeing anything major that we would have to go back and redo. So we're basically having them work on that final plan. Another big component of that plan that's going to take us a little bit of time is the pro forma component that comes with it. So while we've now got a decent understanding of what the cost estimates are going to be for the building improvements, another big part of this process was trying to understand, well, how much is it going to cost to own and operate it going forward? So implementing the changes within the building, what effect is that going to have on our operating expenses? But then also, ideally, are we going to see some advantages in generating some more revenue as part of the implementation of these improvements? So we're working with Jeff King of Ballard and King and Associates on that component of it. So I actually have a phone call with him tomorrow morning to revisit that. But once we get that in the draft report in a good place, our intent is to reconvene the citizen task force. We'll provide all that information with them ahead of time to just have one final meeting to review everything and then ultimately prepare to bring that plan we'd like to have a joint work session with the city council and Park and Rec Commission. And then from there, bring it forward to one of our agenda meetings to make our recommendation to city council. So a little bit of process there yet, but I'm hopeful that we'll cross that finish line sometime by the end of this year. Any questions on any of that?
Well, I agree with you. The article in the paper was great. It really came across well. You did a fine job on that.
I just make one comment real quick. One thing I noticed at the public event was that a couple of staff members had come in and were giving a lot of great feedback and ideas about things they would like incorporated into the plan or considered. And it felt like maybe there's an opportunity to maybe re-engage at a higher level the existing staff members at the community center for ideas they have, thoughts they have about what they're seeing thus far. Because just a couple of them, I had a chance to talk to two of them at that event, and like the floodgate opened and they were just grabbing Post-it notes left and right. And some of that might have been, I don't know what I guarantee you engagement has happened with them. I know that there's been engagement opportunities there, but it felt like they were like finally seeing something, and then all these ideas were coming forth as well. It wasn't just therapeutic, venting. It was literally a lot of ideas. Like a personal trainer was there saying, I'd love to be able to do this, this, and this with my classes, but I need a space to be able to do that. This is next level stuff I want to offer our community here, things like that. So I just wanted to share that. I saw Matt Podorotsky a short time after that and shared the same thing with him, but I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you as well.
And that's always something where it's striking that balance of how many people to involve in the planning process. We try to be as inclusive as possible, but obviously, we can't include everybody.
Sure.
But keeping people up to date. And I think what that was demonstrating, from what I understand, is a lot of staff and people are getting excited about the possibilities of what we can do with these new spaces. And it's kind of starting to get into more of the design detail.
Hmm.
And that was a lot of the feedback I heard, was stuff it's like going to be down the road, but it's great to kind of hear the ideas so that we can start factoring that in once we get to it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Zach.
Going on to the next item. You want the bike or you want the Chaska carries?
All right, the Chaska Cares Music Fest. So we continue to plan for this event. We're only about 4 weeks out now. So this is going to occur on Saturday, October 7th. And I think my ask here today is really to get your help and support and kind of promoting this event. So this is a first time event for us. And like a lot of first time events, it takes a while to establish them. And, we're really kind of utilizing more of a grassroots effort, leaning on people to help spread the news about this. And if you have that, if you like our Facebook page and you want to share some of our posts through your personal networks, that would be great. I'll follow up too, even with an email. We've got basically like a letter that describes the event and the fundraising component of what it's going to support for the Miracle League field and future Universal Playground. So if email is a better method for you to send some information out along with the poster, you'll have those tools available to help us get the message out.
Do you have a emailing list that you send out to, like, maybe all the members of the community center or,
Yep.
something
Yeah,
like
we've got
that?
our listservs, like our members, and then we have a subscription for like our recreation programming. So, we're getting it out through that means, along with our social media. But we're kind of taking that next step of like, hey, if we can just get
How have the
people advocating.
how have the ticket sales been so far?
They've been slow.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're kind of needing to push this a little bit.
Okay.
And I think it's, again, because it's new and because it's music artists that people really haven't heard of, even though they are super talented and they're emerging, they're still really not on people's radar. So it's not like Zach Bryan, where you got to go hop online because the tickets are going to sell out in an hour. You kind of got time. And so that's something we're thinking about too, is how do we maybe create a little bit of a call to action to try to get people to purchase tickets sooner versus waiting the week of. But I think my gut tells me a lot of people, I'm hopeful that a lot of people are, maybe it's on their radar, it's within consideration to go to, but they're maybe going to wait till the week of, see how the weather is
Weather
looking.
factor, Marshall.
What's that?
Weather factor.
The weather factor, things like that, which can kind of be a little scary on the planning side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have, we've invested in some advertisement on radio. So you'll hear it on Cities 97 along with 89.3 The Current. We're also working with 89.3 The Current to do some ticket giveaways. So that'll hopefully generate some excitement. Chris Lindahl, our marketing manager, and I also are going to be attending an event on Thursday at CHS Field. And so we came across another nonprofit organization called Cigars and Baseball on an annual event at CHS Field, in which the proceeds go to support all the Miracle League organizations in Minnesota. And so I reached out to them, seeing if they would be all right with us having a booth to promote this music fest, knowing that it's going towards a future Miracle League field. And so they were very, very accommodating. So that'll be a nice opportunity to create some more awareness about the event, kind of with outside of Chaska. And Drayton Farley, that's our headliner there on the right. You can see that's his fall concert poster. He has his debut at the Nashville Grand Ole Opry tomorrow night. And it's kicking off his fall concert. And I know it's hard to see, but there's a lot of major cities across the US. And so it's kind of neat though to see Chaska, Minnesota, you know, in there with all these other major music cities. And then, yeah, you might, I know Terry mentioned this before the meeting, but we're getting some nice traction with some of the fundraising efforts through Rotary towards the future Miracle League field as well. So we've gotten some commitments from Kraus Anderson, the local Chaska Lions Club, and Ridgeview Medical Center. So it's great to see their support towards those efforts. Any other questions on the Music Fest?
Moving on to the next one, we've got the Bike and Walk Master Plan.
We finally got the draft back for us to be able to put out publicly. You should all have gotten that in your email that I sent about a week ago. Working with Kevin Wright, our communications manager. He's gotten that up on the City of Chaska website today. And then, so next up, we'll be essentially generating communication through social media and our, email listservs and things like that to point people towards the information on the website. I'll follow up too with a link so you all know where that is on the website. So there again, encourage you to talk with your neighbors and friends and have them take a look at the information on the website. So really, this is just kind of closing the loop in the process to showcase back to the community, kind of the feedback that they provided at the front end of this process to help develop this master plan. And for us to see what type of comments they have for us to consider before we would bring that back forward for formal approval. And again, I anticipate conducting another work session with City Council to review the master plan with them, to have an opportunity to go a little bit more in depth in the plan and talk about the process we used prior to then bringing it back forward to the Park and Rec Commission here for a recommendation to City Council for approval in the coming months. We'll leave that information up on the website, but we'll generally allow for 30 days to generate some interest amongst the community to take a look at it and provide us comment before we would then set up those meetings with City Council to review it.
That the document you sent out on the end of August to us?
133 pages of it.
Yeah, I read it and I thought, what a meaty document. I mean, a huge amount of information in there.
It is. It's really well
Well
done.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Yeah, there is a lot of things in there for us to work towards, which is great. And I like the variety of things, through the 6 E's approach that we took. And that's why, we're calling it a 2040 vision because it's going to take time. Things, but, I really am excited about putting some emphasis on walking and biking and all the benefits that provides the community and providing us a vision and some recommendations that we can work towards into the future. So, yeah.
Other department happenings.
All right. So So highlight a few more things up and coming. So on Friday, September 22nd, will be our Latin Music and Food Fest occurring out at Fireman's Park. So that I think is in its third year, continues to grow. But great event with food and music and a lot of ethnic activities there, along with fireworks. It's kind of fun to get some fireworks in the fall. And if you haven't seen the fireworks down at Fireman's, they're some of the best. So encourage you to attend that. At the community center, we'll be offering Parents Night Out options starting October 6th and going through December 29th. That'll be on every other Friday night. So it's an opportunity for parents to drop their kids off and go out and enjoy a Friday night while we entertain the kids. So that's from 5:30 to 8:30 at night. We've got an adaptive program occurring out at Athletic Park on September 20th. So we're gonna play some t-ball with kids with special needs and get them out on Athletic Park, which will be kind of a fun treat for those kids and families to experience that facility. Speaking of pickleball, we got beginner pickleball lessons starting up on September 25th. And then we've got a fun game night that's going to be occurring at the lodge on September 20th at 5:30 for our active older adults. And staff there do a fantastic job. I know last year they transformed the lodge and I mean, it looked like a mini casino almost with just a variety of games and things. So a lot of fun there. Participants really enjoy that. Over at the Curling Center, we did end up securing a U.S. Curling National event. So it'll be the 5 and under championships. And that's going to occur on the weekend of April 24th and actually run 24th through the 28th. So 5 and under is for individuals that have been not age 5 and under, individuals that have curled for less than 5 or under years. So more beginner level championship. And then
Walking.
I just want to acknowledge while we're talking about curling, you might have saw on some of our social media, but we had one of our youth teams, two of our youth teams here from Chaska compete in the Junior Olympic trials last week in Denver, Colorado. And basically it's 3-4 days of pool play, and then they get seeded into kind of the tournament, which is quarterfinal, semifinal, and then the championship. Both of our Chaska teams made the semifinals, and coming out of the semifinals, one of them, Team Podoroski, went into the championship round. Unfortunately, they lost that match. It was close. It was 5-4. But just super encouraging to see kids here from Chaska competing and at a very high level and representing our community, which is really a result of that facility. And those kids starting at a young age and really getting into that sport, and just all their hard work and dedication and passion is paying off. And I think there's just a lot of great opportunities for all of them as they continue. There's going to be more opportunities for them to continue to compete and be on that national stage. So it was fun to watch. And that is all the updates I have.
Thank you. Other business, roundtable.
I always have something.
Oh, I know, it's always good to.
I got a private tour with Brent about the goats over at Savannah Oaks. So that was really fun. The company, I think it's B3. The owners were there too, so it was fun to like talk to them, and they got to tell me the names of the goats and
Just
hear
ask if they
about.
have names.
Yep, they all have names. So that was fun, and hear more about the restoration project that's going on. And I'm really excited about it on a professional level too, along with being like for the park level. It's really cool. So
It's still there now,
I
or
don't
is it
think
done?
They have wrapped up their duties. Yeah.
I hope they were compensated fairly.
We got to eat.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
what,
they got to eat. There we go.
so what'll happen next? So there's a lot of twiggy, I don't know if that's the right word, but twigs still remaining. You know, they ate all the leaves and whatnot. So our park maintenance staff will go back through and mow that down and then start to seed it yet this fall. You know, and then come back and reassess things in the spring. I'll also note too, as part of that, a lot of that occurred kind of on the north side of the playground area, which were kind of part of that phase 2. And so there is a phase 2 trail system that was a part of that project. The maintenance staff had already kind of cleared out a path for people to see what the general alignment is. And so that'll be another thing they'll plan to do yet this fall, is to go back in and then subcut the trail and then ideally rock it before the winter. And then that'll get paved sometime late spring, early summer of next year. So yeah, a lot of great progress. And one thing we're still working to coordinate, and I'll just likely have to keep you updated via email, is kind of a ribbon ceremony or ribbon cutting for that park. Now that a lot of the other amenities have been installed. So I'll chat with our city administrator, but I'm thinking of Monday, October 2nd, which is a future city council meeting. I don't think they have a work session planned. And so my thought was maybe we could have it stop over a little bit prior to the regular meeting and do a little ribbon cutting. So got to celebrate that park.
yeah,
A lot of
absolutely.
good great progress there.
So I think say that wetland restoration, because we walked through that afterwards, and that was really good too. I was really impressed with that. Yeah, so that's a really beautiful wetland that's over there with lots of pretty flowers and all that good stuff. So yeah, and there's a park there too, I guess.
I have nothing.
I was recently on the Hawks Ridge Trail with my kids. Both of them are starting to get into mountain biking, and there's a lot of, I don't know, what are they, grasshoppers? It's like flying at your legs, in your spokes. That was kind of annoying, but once you got going, it wasn't too bad. But
Up this year.
I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, do we have much program out there for, like, let's say adults to kind of learn better techniques on mountain biking? I know there's the mountain biking club at school for kids, but like, let's say I wanted to get better. Are there classes available? Okay.
That feeds for us to look into.
Because I think the guy who had kind of helped spearhead all of this had once talked about that
Yeah,
and
Tim
wanting to
Bosberg.
do. Yeah.
Yep. I think he generally has some availability in the summer. He gets quite busy this time of year because he's coaching
Yeah, sure.
club, but there could be some other contacts he knows of. We'd probably have to look at some sort of outside instructor. I don't think we have the expertise internally to teach that type of class, but it's good feedback for us.
Yeah, because I got slightly annoyed when my 7-year-old son was telling me to keep up. Okay, I don't like practice out here by myself.
We'll have the next work session. We'll Go meet out there and
Hiking.
mountain bike.
I don't want to assume here, but my guess is he's got a little less fear than
Yeah, that much closer to the ground
and when
too.
you're out on those trails where those kids seem to they just have no fear, right? And
Yeah, I remember that at my age, like going down hills, not holding on to the handlebars. Well, I would never do that today. Like,
I do a little bit of mountain bike riding and there's a little bit of that processing of risk versus reward going on. And I'm usually one, well, I'll go around the obstacles.
yeah,
Risk isn't worth it.
I'm a little scared of falling and, it's not worth it, but.
right.
Virginia?
Actually, I have a question. I can't, this morning that something came up with, and I don't know if this is out of scope of what we do, with cannabis now being approved in Minnesota in public areas. Is there any like policy that this group needs to worry about in terms of our parks? Or is that a discussion for city council?
Good question.
That ain't us.
That's
Thank
a good
That
question.
is a good
Yeah,
question.
because there's parks, I think if there's playgrounds, it might be something to think about.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's been discussed at the staff level.
I thought I saw St. Paul was actually considering banning it in their public spaces, and I'm not so sure that's something the city should look at.
Yeah, there's quite a few agencies that are starting to look into that, and especially agents, and we'd fall a little bit into this category because currently we do not have even an ordinance on just general smoking. So there's a lot of cities that already have established ordinances that prohibit smoking in public spaces. And so the cannabis essentially kind of falls into that. So they're going to basically latch on to that existing ordinance and they're covered.
Sure.
Whereas cities like us, we don't even have a no smoking ordinance. And so those are things that we're going to have to start to look into. Matt Podorowski, our city administrator, I know is in communication with the League of Minnesota Cities. I think before we just kind of react to this, we feel like it'd be nice to get some direction from the League of Minnesota Cities. And a lot of us are needing to go down the same path. And so it'd be nice to approach that. And so that is, yeah, it's on our radar. And I think, we'll ultimately probably get a little feel from city council too, in terms of what they would like to see there, for us as staff to then look further into it.
If that was open, if I was.
Yeah, absolutely. It's intended for everybody to come, and just celebrate the Latino based food and music and celebrate. So yep, everybody's welcome to attend that.
Last year at that, the performers were really good.
Yeah.
The bands were super. I haven't got anything tonight. Mary, you got anything for us? Good. Write this down.
I'm ready.
I had nothing and Mary has something?
Oh,
See,
just wanted to mention to those of you whose terms are up at the end of the year, and we have quite a few actually. So obviously we have Dave, who will be done at the end of the year. But Jason, Danielle, Carly, and Sam You're all due to reapply, hopefully. So just wanted to let you know that, because it'll be here before we know it, and I'll work with Denise at City Hall to get the applications to you as soon as we can and move forward with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, sir.
Zach, second.
I second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. It is 8:30 and we are adjourned.